Vanishing Voice, July 2nd, 1937, somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. A woman's voice, once strong and composed, slices through the static of history. We are running north and south. Gas is low, cannot see land. Then, silence. Not a silence of relief, a silence that howls with questions. For more than 88 years, that silence has echoed across oceans, into laboratories, across chalkboards, and into the hearts of those who still wonder. What really happened to Amelia Earhart?
We never hear from her again. She's been gone 87 years, and we still don't have a definitive answer as to what happened to her.
She wasn't just a pilot. She was America's soaring soul, the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic, a feminist icon, a symbol of America's boundless ambition. She turned clouds into stepping stones and then vanished without a trace. But behind her smile and her flight goggles was a woman chasing something bigger than fame. This is the true story behind that final transmission, and the evidence that's still being uncovered. Across 8 chapters, we'll unravel history with every clue, explore the scientific breakthroughs, and dive into theories once thought impossible. Because the sky may have gone quiet, but her story is still flying. Chapter 1. The Girl Who Leapt Before She Looked. Atchison, Kansas, 1897. Amelia Mary Earhart was born into a world that had already made decisions about who she should be. But from the moment she could walk, she challenged every one of them. While most girls her age were handed porcelain dolls and frilly dresses, Amelia craved the unknown. She would wander her grandparents' farmland, not with tea sets or playthings, but with a .22 rifle slung over her shoulder, her sharp eyes scanning for coyotes or stray targets. It wasn't aggression, it was curiosity. She wanted to see what she was capable of. At just 7 years old, Amelia engineered her first flight, of sorts. Inspired by a book she had read on adventurers, she salvaged wooden planks, greased them with lard, and built a homemade roller coaster off the roof of a tool shed. It was a reckless launch. The contraption careened into a rain barrel, soaking her completely. She emerged bruised, scratched, and breathless with excitement. "Next time I'll nail the landing," she said, not in defeat, but in declaration. Even then, she understood that failure wasn't final. It was a step. Her scrapbook became a window into her dreams. While most girls pressed flowers and birthday cards, Amelia pasted clippings about women who made history, female engineers, doctors in war zones, mountaineers, inventors. These were the stories that shaped her. She wasn't content to watch history. She wanted to write it. But life at home was stormy. Her father, Edwin Earhart, was a railroad lawyer whose charm masked his deepening struggle with alcoholism. The family moved often, chasing stability that never came. Her mother, Amy, raised Amelia and her sister Muriel with quiet resolve, encouraging them to question authority and embrace adventure. That encouragement had consequences. Amelia hated conformity. She refused to wear dresses when she could help it and spent hours climbing trees or fixing gadgets in the garage. At school, she was intelligent but restless. Teachers noted her fierce independence and refusal to be boxed in. When World War I broke out, Amelia, then in her early 20s, volunteered as a nurse's aide in Toronto. There, in the Canadian hospitals packed with wounded soldiers, she was introduced to the harsh realities of war. The stench of antiseptics and blood, the quiet groans of dying men. It sobered her, but also galvanized her. One afternoon, while walking outside the hospital, she looked up and saw a Royal Flying Corps pilot perform a loop overhead. The biplane sliced through the clouds like a needle through silk. That moment stayed with her. Planes were no longer machines. They were instruments of poetry and freedom. She began visiting airfields on her days off, talking to mechanics and watching pilots prep their aircraft. She peppered them with questions, studied their movements, and watched as they took to the sky with daring precision. Her path was no longer uncertain. It was carved in wind and fuel and lift. Flying wouldn't be a career. It would be her calling. Chapter 2. The Sky Becomes Home. December 28, 1920. The wind was brisk and dry as Amelia Earhart stepped onto the tarmac at Long Beach, California. She had come for a thrill, 10 minutes in a rickety biplane with a local barnstormer named Frank Hawks. But the moment the plane's wheels lifted from the ground, something ancient and exhilarating ignited in her. In those 10 minutes, the world below became irrelevant. The noisy chaos of Earth was replaced by a serene clarity above the clouds. When they landed, Amelia turned to her father and said without hesitation, "I know what I want to do." She poured herself into this newfound obsession. Earning her wings would not be easy. Amelia took any job she could find, driving a gravel truck, working as a photographer's assistant, even managing a telephone switchboard. She scraped together every dollar to pay for flying lessons. Her teacher was Nita Snook, a pioneering female aviator who saw Amelia's raw determination and refused to go easy on her. They trained in a Curtiss JN-4 Jenny, roaring over dusty fields with Amelia clutching the stick and absorbing every command. In 1921, she bought her first airplane, a bright yellow Kinner Airster she affectionately called the Canary. Just 2 years later, she broke the women's altitude record by soaring to 14,000 feet. Amelia didn't just want to fly, she wanted to break boundaries, literally and figuratively. She joined the 99s, a group of 99 licensed female pilots, and championed women's visibility in aviation. She took on long solo flights, navigated dangerous airfields, and weathered the prejudice of a male-dominated field. The press, intrigued by her quiet confidence and distinctive style, dubbed her Lady Lindy, a nod to Charles Lindbergh. But Amelia wanted more than headlines. She wanted history. In the late 1920s, she became a tireless promoter of aviation. She wrote columns, gave lectures, and toured the country. Her name began to appear beside aircraft brands and flight schools, helping normalize female presence in aviation. Even the U.S. Department of Commerce began to recognize her influence, inviting her to shape safety standards and promote aviation infrastructure. Amelia Earhart was no longer a dreamer. She had become a national voice, her words encouraging girls to look skyward and see possibilities, not limits. This was no longer a hobby. It was her life's work. Chapter 3. A Hero Without Controls. In 1928, Amelia Earhart was approached with a headline-making offer to become the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. There was just one catch: she wouldn't be the pilot. The plan was for a transatlantic flight piloted by Wilmer Stultz and Lou Gordon. Amelia's role would be that of a passenger and record keeper. It wasn't her dream, but she agreed. The opportunity to make history, even as a passive participant, was a step closer to her ultimate goal.
Experienced men were to pilot the plane, and Amelia would be little more than a passenger. Nevertheless, she quickly agreed.
On June 17, 1928, the plane Friendship lifted off from Newfoundland and flew across the cold Atlantic waters. Amelia sat in the back, bundled in furs, documenting every moment. She later admitted, "I felt like a sack of potatoes." The flight lasted more than 20 hours and landed in Wales. The crew was exhausted, but safe. When they returned, the world erupted in celebration. Newspapers splashed her photo across front pages. Parades and speaking tours followed. To the public, Amelia had flown across the Atlantic, but she knew the truth. Rather than sulk, she used the fame strategically. She published a book titled 20 Hours, 40 Minutes, detailing the flight from her perspective. She went on a speaking circuit, met political leaders, and shaped her image with precision. The nation dubbed her Lady Lindy, a nod to Charles Lindbergh, but she was determined to become a legend on her own terms. In 1932, she seized her chance. Amelia became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. She took off from Newfoundland in a crimson Lockheed Vega and landed in Northern Ireland after 15 harrowing hours.
On May 20th, 1932, just 5 years after Lindy had shocked the world with his famous flight, she successfully spanned the Atlantic from Newfoundland to Londonderry, Ireland, the first woman to make the flight solo.
Along the way, she battled icy winds, mechanical failures, and fog. This time, there were no other pilots, no safety nets. It was all her. The accomplishment catapulted her to global fame. She received the Distinguished Flying Cross from Congress, the first ever awarded to a woman. Over the next several years, Amelia broke records across the world. She flew solo from Honolulu to Oakland, from Mexico City to New Jersey. Each time she defied expectations, not just of what a woman could do, but of what any human could achieve. She wasn't just flying, she was rewriting history at 10,000 feet. Chapter 4. The World Flight and the Vanishing Line. By 1937, Amelia Earhart had already achieved what most could only dream of. But one challenge remained: to fly around the world at the equator, its longest possible circumference. The journey would require crossing over 29,000 miles and navigating some of the most remote areas on Earth. With funding from Purdue University, where she served as a counselor for women in engineering, and technical support from Lockheed, Amelia had her aircraft, the Lockheed Electra 10E.
The huge Lockheed Electra, dubbed by Amelia the Flying Laboratory, sailed off on a planned round-the-world trip. Her aim, ostensibly, was to gather weather information for use in a class she planned to teach in aeronautics at Purdue University.
This wasn't just any plane, it was a twin-engine marvel, customized with long-range fuel tanks and advanced navigation equipment. Her chosen navigator was Fred Noonan, a respected former Pan Am pilot with years of Pacific flying experience. On March 17, 1937, their first attempt began. Taking off from Oakland, California, they headed west. But disaster struck in Hawaii when a tire burst during takeoff, damaging the Electra. After weeks of repairs and setbacks, they launched a second attempt on June 1st, this time flying eastward. They traversed South America, Africa, India, and Southeast Asia, completing over 22,000 miles. On July 2nd, they departed from Lae, Papua New Guinea, en route to Howland Island, a tiny sliver of land in the middle of the Pacific. From there, they planned to continue to Hawaii and finally California. But Howland Island was just 6,500 feet long, barely above sea level, and surrounded by vast ocean. Navigation would have to be nearly perfect. In their final transmissions, Amelia indicated they were flying on schedule, but unable to locate the island. Fuel was running low. Some believe Noonan may have miscalculated their position due to the international date line. Others point to antenna damage or radio malfunctions. Either way, Amelia and Fred vanished from radar, sight, and eventually, history. Chapter 5. The Itasca's Vigil. July 2nd, 1937, 7:42 a.m. Aboard the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca, stationed near Howland Island, radio operator Leo Bellarts heard Amelia's faint voice crackle through the static. KHAQQ calling Itasca. We must be on you, but cannot see you. Gas is running low. Panic gripped the ship. The Itasca had been assigned to guide Amelia's final leg using radio signals and smoke plumes from its stack. But something was terribly wrong. Amelia could transmit, but couldn't receive. For hours, the crew blasted Morse code and homing signals into the air, hoping Earhart and Noonan would pick them up. But the Electra never responded. At 8:43 a.m., another faint message came through. We are running north and south. And then, nothing. The U.S. Navy launched what became the largest air and sea search in peacetime history at the time. 10 ships, 65 aircraft, and over 250,000 square miles of ocean were scoured. But no trace of the Electra was ever found. To this day, the final moments of that transmission remain one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history. Some believe the plane simply ran out of fuel and crashed into the ocean. Others insist it may have landed elsewhere, starting an entirely different chapter of Amelia's story. The only certainty was this. On that morning in 1937, a woman who had spent her life chasing the sky disappeared into it. Chapter 6. Nikumaroro, the Island That Whispers. September 1940. On the desolate island of Nikumaroro, an uninhabited coral atoll in the Pacific Ocean, British colonial officer Gerald Gallagher made a startling discovery beneath the shade of a Pisonia tree. Human bones, a woman's shoe, a sextant box, and an old liquor bottle lay scattered in the sand. The bones were shipped to Fiji, examined by Dr. David Hoodless, and identified as likely belonging to a woman approximately 5 feet 7 inches tall, Amelia's height. But then the bones vanished. Wartime chaos, lost to history. Years later, a renewed effort by TIGHAR, the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, brought fresh attention to Nikumaroro. In 2010, a forensic team uncovered signs of survival: bird bones, fish remains, and ashes from a cooking fire, indications someone had lived, even briefly, on the island. They also found a broken jar of Dr. Berry's freckle ointment, Earhart's favorite. Further evidence included a small piece of plexiglass matching the thickness and curvature of the Electra's window and a zipper pull from the 1930s. In 2020, satellite imagery captured a curious underwater shape near the reef, an object 4 by 8 meters in size, dubbed the Taraya anomaly. Researchers speculated it could be the fuselage of the Electra, dragged underwater by tides. Could Amelia have landed safely on the reef during low tide? Could she and Fred Noonan have survived for days, even weeks, transmitting radio signals no one could triangulate in time? The clues suggest yes. Radio signals picked up after her disappearance were consistent with a downed aircraft using its battery to transmit distress calls. Forensic dogs trained to detect human remains were brought to the island and consistently alerted to the same site where Gallagher found the bones. The Nikumaroro theory presents the most compelling mix of hard evidence and circumstantial clues. Probability, 65%. Chapter 7. Deep Sea Shadow, the Crash and Sink Theory. January 2024. A sonar ping echoes beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean. A team aboard a research vessel funded by Tony Romeo, a former U.S. Air Force intelligence officer, is mapping the seafloor near Howland Island, where Amelia was last supposed to arrive. As the autonomous underwater vehicle, AUV, scans the terrain 16,000 feet below, it captures the shape of something strange, a metallic shadow shaped like a twin-engine aircraft. Romeo's analysts compare the silhouette to historical diagrams. Wingspan, 55 feet. Length, 38 feet. The dimensions match Amelia's Lockheed Electra almost exactly. Romeo believes Amelia didn't make it to Nikumaroro or get captured. His theory? Fred Noonan, her navigator, made a critical miscalculation, forgetting to adjust for the international dateline. They veered off course by nearly 60 miles, running out of fuel just west of Howland. The ocean here is known for being deceptively calm on the surface, but punishingly deep below. If the Electra went down intact, it could easily have sunk beyond the reach of wartime search efforts. In fact, Amelia's last recorded transmission supports this possibility. We are on the line 157/337. We are running north and south. That navigational line runs right past the sonar contact. Romeo's sonar evidence adds weight to a theory long proposed by the U.S. Navy. Amelia crashed and sank within a short radius of Howland Island. Supporting this, no trace of the plane was ever found on land despite extensive island searches. But under the waves? It might have gone undetected for decades. Storms forced Romeo's team to retreat before they could deploy cameras or submersibles, but the next expedition is already planned for 2026. The crash and sink theory doesn't offer survival stories or island clues. It's cold, final, but it's grounded in solid navigational logic and now, potentially, hard sonar data. Probability, 30%. Chapter 8. The Capture Myth, Conspiracy or Coincidence? To some, the disappearance of Amelia Earhart wasn't an accident or navigation error, it was a capture. The theory? That Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan were taken prisoner by the Japanese after crash landing in the Marshall Islands. It's a story that caught fire in conspiracy circles for decades. A Caucasian woman with short hair seen on a dock in a Japanese-controlled island. Whispered reports of an American woman held captive. radio transmissions misinterpreted as cries for help. Some claimed that Amelia was a U.S. spy using her world flight as cover. In this narrative, the Japanese military intercepted her and Noonan and imprisoned them. Witnesses from Saipan later recounted stories of a woman matching Amelia's description being buried near a Japanese prison camp. In 2017, a grainy photograph from the National Archives resurfaced. It appeared to show a white woman and man on a dock in the Marshall Islands. The internet exploded. Was this the smoking gun? Unfortunately, no. The photograph was later dated to 1935, 2 years before Earhart vanished. The people in the image were identified as unrelated tourists. The evidence crumbled. Historians and researchers have found no credible Japanese military records referencing Amelia Earhart, no aircraft debris, no prison logs, no DNA evidence. The theory, while sensational, lacks substance. Still, the allure of a dramatic government cover-up keeps this myth alive. In the absence of definitive proof, speculation thrives. However, this is highly unlikely based on lack of physical evidence and debunked photo. Probability rating, 5%. The unfinished sky. As the sun sets over the Pacific, a new expedition prepares to sail. The research vessel Resolute turns toward Nikumaroro, its hold packed with submersibles, sonar rigs, and hope. Purdue scientists and underwater archaeologists are determined to resolve the final coordinates of one of history's greatest disappearances. But Amelia's legacy isn't buried in sand or fossilized beneath coral. It lives in the open skies and in every young woman who dares to chart a course no one else has flown. She taught us that adventure begins when certainty ends, and that true courage is continuing forward even when the map is incomplete. Her story wasn't a tragedy, it was an invitation. So what really happened to Amelia Earhart? We may never know the full truth, but her echo remains in every unanswered question, every flight that pushes past the horizon. The girl from Kansas didn't disappear, she ascended. If you found Amelia's story as inspiring and mysterious as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Stay tuned for our next video to remember America's past.